On today's show, the Philadelphia 76ers signed Paul George in free agency, forming a new big three with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. How good are the new look 76ers? Where do they stack up in the Eastern Conference? And can teams with a big three still work in today's NBA? It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, I love sports. I love them so much. I never really want them to stop, right? But as you got the playoffs winding down and you get fewer and fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like the way you wanted to, look, FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up big bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Right now, you can head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and take a look at the outright betting favorites for the NBA championship next season. The Boston Celtics at plus 300 to repeat next year. The Denver Nuggets behind them at plus 750. And in third place, after freshly signing Paul George, the Philadelphia 76ers at plus 850. So for all those odds and so much more, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Sixers, John Mitchell. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Sixers, here with the biggest, splashiest news of NBA free agency so far. The Sixers landing star Paul George via free agency, forming a new big three alongside Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. A lot to unpack here, John, but just give us your instant reaction to the Sixers landing Paul George.
Yeah, Jackson, thanks for having me on. It became one of the worst kept secrets probably about 48 hours ago. We started hearing things, and I talked to some sources, and they said, yeah, it looks like he's going to wind up in Philadelphia. It does give the 76ers, who I'm hearing now have agreed in principle with Tyrese Maxey on a 5-year max extension as well. So it gives them a really nice big three. I mean, the one contingency is that you gotta have health. Health is your wealth, as you know. And but I do think, and I've been a critic of Daryl Morey's, but I do think that, bringing in a 34-year-old, multiple all-league, multiple all-star player, 34-year-old is a good thing for the 76ers. It gives them that 2, 3, maybe even 4-year window. And, they were falling behind Boston, who's ahead of everybody, but falling behind the New York Knicks in the division. So this is a great chance for them, picking up Andre Drummond, bringing Kelly Oubre back. There's some good things that are falling into place for the 76ers that people who are fans of this team are going to like.
Yeah, and then obviously also Daryl Morey's fascination with bringing back ex-Houston Rockets into the fold, bringing in Eric Gordon as well, another pretty quality pickup for this 76ers team. How do you envision this dynamic looking with, so obviously bringing Paul George in the fold, you lock down Tyrese Maxey long-term with the rookie scale extension. Do you envision a world where Paul George steps in and is maybe the second option to Joel Embiid, or does he take more of a backseat to those two since they already have such a strong dynamic duo between Maxey and Embiid right now?
Yeah, I think that they have the luxury of working Paul George in. He doesn't have to step right in and assert and insert himself to be, hey, I'm the number two. He was coming off where he was number two with the Clippers. I think they can work him in easily because of the ascension of Tyrese Maxey. I mean, Maxey had 50 points in 3 games last year. Tyrese Maxey is scratching the surface on what he can become. And I think that's a good opportunity for Paul George to just feel his way in. But, at the same time, the clock is ticking. He's 34 years old, and the expectations are going to be high. They're going to be high in Philadelphia. You haven't been to the finals since 2001, and last year you didn't make the second round. So they'll work him in, and I think that they have the excuse me, I think they have the right coach in Nick Nurse to make this process simple for everybody.
It really feels like we're witnessing kind of this arms race in the
Yeah.
Eastern Conference, right? I mean, the Celtics are obviously the team to beat, the defending champs, but you have the New York Knicks with their massive trades and re-upping their contracts, and so they're really strong looking competition right now. And then not to forget the Milwaukee Bucks, who fresh off their own title run a couple seasons ago, they've still got Giannis, they've still got Dame, a lot of talent on that roster. Some questions to be sure. But when you look at the 76ers as presently constructed, still maybe some moves on the horizon. Where do you think this team lands right now, just on paper, looking at the rest of the Eastern Conference? Are they the second best team in the Eastern Conference, or are they kind of right there with the New York Knicks for a claim to that second spot behind the Celtics?
No, they're better than the Knicks, with the assumption being that they're healthy. They're better than the Knicks right now, and Boston's better than everybody, but they're better than the Knicks.
How do you and just does this move help? How much more does this gap get closed between obviously Boston being the team that's better than everybody else? Where does that put, like, how much distance is there, I guess, between the Celtics and the 76ers right now in your eyes?
The distance is Joel Embiid's health and his weight. I think if Joel Embiid's listed in the media guide at 280, but Joel Embiid is realistically 300 north of 300 pounds. If Joel Embiid comes in at a legitimate 280 pounds, they can beat Boston and stays healthy. They can beat Boston. He has to stay healthy. He's missed he's missed 336 games to player injury.
It's really tough. That has definitely been the issue with Embiid, where if he's healthy, he's one of the most dominant players, one of the most dominant forces in the NBA on both sides of the basketball, mind you. But when he misses time, I mean, it's really tough to have to deal with that year in, year out, it feels like, with Embiid. Now, I'm curious your thoughts on this, John. We've seen the NBA kind of transition away from the big threes, the star-studded teams where you have 3-star players all locked in together, and part of that is because of the new ramifications of the CBA. When you're one of those top spending teams, you have less and less ways to improve the roster. There's a lot more financial constraints placed on teams. What do you think makes this version of a big three different in this era of NBA basketball? Why do you think this big three can succeed compared to other potential, big threes or teams that have tried to put together a big three that have kind of failed? Because we're looking, I mean, the Boston Celtics are kind of the model now, right? They have their 2 stars, and then they have the right pieces around those 2 stars instead of trying to put 3 stars together.
And that's what the 76ers are going to have to do, Jackson. They're going to have it come together around Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. I think you have the personalities and you have the players. And yes, as you know, the big three can sometimes collapse. But usually the big three doesn't have a 23-year-old ascending superstar. I think that's probably the difference here. You got a guy in Tyrese Maxey who's got a huge ceiling, and you have good personalities here. You have Paul George and you have Joel. I think it can work in Philadelphia. It's not going to be a large window. I think they can be the second best team in the Eastern Conference. I think they can be. But because, we're talking about a team that hasn't won a championship in 41 years, and Philadelphia is a hardcore city. It should be located in Missouri, because they're going to have to show the fan base that they can make it happen. But on paper, paper gets coaches fired. But on paper, it looks like they can be the second best team in the conference.
What other moves can we expect potentially on the horizon here for the 76ers? I know there's some speculation about Paul Reed and whether or not he sticks around with the 76ers, because there's still some financial constraints that they got to figure out to be able to make all of these reported signings official and make them work. But what other moves can we expect from the 76ers as we navigate the rest of free agency?
Well, I think they still need a power forward. Pete, B-ball Paul was more of a center, small ball center for the 76ers. And I kind of think that they may waive him to give them about $14 million more to operate with. So they have some money to go out and get somebody, but they need a power forward. They still need a legitimate power forward. And I think that you may see Paul Reed get cut.
Will the 76ers be able to upset the Boston Celtics next year in the NBA? How will the arms race play out in the Eastern Conference? You're going to have us covered for all that and so much more over at Locked On 76ers. John, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Jackson, thanks for having me, man. Have a good day.